everybody, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 here, and welcome to the Spring 2024 Orichalcos Challenge Easy Mode Deck Profile. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. I've made some slight modifications to easy mode. This way, it can be tested against various meta decks, various casual decks, and more other decks. I think it's gonna do a lot better than the last easy mode model, which wasn't that good in my opinion. So I made some modifications to make it just a little bit better. Anywho, enough of my rambling. Let's see what we got this time, shall we? So, first and foremost, as per usual, we pretty much got our 2 copies of Orichalcos Cutora. Basically, I can special summon this from my hand by paying 500 life points. And if this thing is destroyed in any way, shape, or form, then these come out. Orichalcos Shunoros, Dexia, and Aristoros. Basically, Shunoros' attack point. Is it attack? Is it just attack, or is it attack and event? No, it's just his attack points. His attack is equal to all the battle damage that Orichalcos Cutora has absorbed. This guy right here, because Cutora's main effect is basically, while it's on the field, all battle damage I take drops to 0. So basically, all battle damage that Cutora absorbed is transferred to Orichalcos Shunoros when Cutora is blown up. So say Cutora has absorbed 2,000 points of effect damage. That 2,000 points of effect damage is transferred to Shunoros' attack points. And basically, then you got Shunoros' arms here, Orichalcos Dexia and Orichalcos Aristoros. Basically, Dexia here, it will always be 300 attack points higher than the monster it is battling. And Aristoros will be always 300 defense points higher than the monster it is battling. But Aristoros has basically another effect as well. If one of my other Orichalcos monsters would be attacked, the attack is redirected to Aristoros. So basically, Aristoros can basically shield your other monsters. And he can do that as many times as he wants. That's not a hard once per turn. And as per usual, if Orichalcos Shunoros is blown up, the arms go with him, and when that happens, bang, Divine Serpent. Basically, when he's summoned, all cards in my hand go to the graveyard, and my life points are reduced to 0, but as long as he remains on the field, I remain in the game regardless of win conditions, including Exodia. And he's got infinite attack and defense points. Plus, in order for him to attack, I have to send the is it top 5 or top 10? I have to send the top 10 cards of my deck to the graveyard in order to attack with it. So that's how he works. Next up is 1 copy of Orichalcos Gygus. Basically, every time Gygus is destroyed, he just comes right back 500 attack points stronger. But however, I have to skip my next draw phase. So that's how he works. Next up is 1 Orichalcos Doom Beetle. Basically, what he does is if this card is destroyed while I control a face-up Orichalcos field spell, I can activate one of these effects. I can either inflict 800 damage to my opponent for each card in their hand, or I can summon this card in attack position. So I can either do burn damage, or I can basically resummon him. Next up is 1 copy of Orichalcos Malevolence. Now, what Malevolence does is once per turn, I can target a defense position monster my opponent controls and change it to face-up attack position. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, my opponent sends the top 3 cards of their deck to the graveyard. That last effect is an additional effect that I added on to Malevolence just to make him a little bit better. Next up, 1 copy of Lord of the Orichalcos Army. Now, what he does is he negates the effects of all trap cards that target him, and during my draw phase, I can add 1 level 4 lower Orichalcos monster from my deck to my hand instead of conducting my normal draw. So I can sacrifice my next draw in order to get a search. Next up, 1 copy of Cyber Valley. You should all know what Cyber Valley does. Next up, 1 copy of Nightbeam, the Darkest Pony. This is one of the staples of this particular deck here. What this does is when it's normal summon, I can add up to 3 Orichalcos field spells from my deck to my hand. And it doesn't matter whether the Orichalcos field spells have the same exact name or if they're different names. It's Orichalcos field spells in general. So I can pretty much add triple seal of Orichalcos to my hand. Or seal, Deutros, or Tritos. Next up, I pretty much run 2 copies of Orichalcos Magnus. Now, what Orichalcos Magus does is this card gains 400 attack for every other Orichalcos monster I control. So, this thing is mainly a beat stick. Next up, I have 1 copy of Orichalcos Soldier. Now, what Orichalcos Soldier does is it cannot be normal summoned or set, and if I control an Orichalcos field spell, I can special summon this card from my hand. Once per turn only, my version of a hard once per turn, by the way, you can destroy 1 card on the field, and this effect cannot be used if you don't control an Orichalcos field spell. And while this card is face up on the field, monsters my opponent controls lose 200 attack during each of their standby phases. So this thing can not only blow up other cards, but it can reduce your opponent's attacking monsters during their standby phase by 200. Each of their standby phase. Next up, we got Orichalcos and Tuneric. Now, this is pretty much a secondary boss monster of the deck. Now, what he does is he cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 Orichalcos monsters from your graveyard. If this card is special summoned, add 1 Orichalcos card from your deck to your hand. This card's original attack is equal to the number of Orichalcos monsters in your graveyard times 400. And if a monster or monsters you control would be affected by the effect of an opponent's monster effect, I can negate the activation, and if I do, destroy it. If this card would be destroyed, you could banish 1 Orichalcos monster from your graveyard instead. If this card is in your graveyard, you could banish 2 Orichalcos monsters from your graveyard to special summon this card to your field. You can only use each effect of Orichalcos and Tuneric once per turn only. So basically that's what he does. I just gotta make dead sure that that's 400. Yep, that's 400. Okay, next up, staple of the Orichalcos challenge. You gotta have your free copies of Tour Guide. And 1 pre-errata Sangan, 1 pre-errata Witch of the Black Forest. The old school versions, not the weaker new school versions like we got now. Oh, no, no, no. This is an Orichalcos challenge. We use pre-erratas here. Then, for the final monster of the deck, we have Orichalcos. One of the 2 final monsters, might I add. The first of my final 2 monsters is Dragoness Orichalcos. Now, what he does is cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by attributing 3 Orichalcos monsters on your field with different names while you control an Orichalcos field spell, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card's original attack is equal to the number of cards that are on the field and in both players' hands times 500. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, destroy all spell and traps on the field. So this can not only be a big beat stick, but if it gets destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, it's basically a heavy storm. Next up, the final monster of the deck. 1 copy of Air Knight Parshaft. Very good, very good, very good for dealing in some piercing battle damage, and you get to draw a card with him too. So that's pretty much it for the monsters. Here is the spell and trap lineup. First up, we pretty much have triple seal of Orichalcos, the main card you use in the Orichalcos challenge. Basically, how the seal of Orichalcos works with the Orichalcos challenge is this: cannot leave the field. Also, its activation and effects cannot be negated. All monsters you control gain 500 attack points. Your spell and trap zones are also treated as main monster zones. Monsters in your back main monster zones that your spell and trap zones are converted to cannot be attacked while you control monsters in your front main monster zones. You can move monsters from your main monster zones to your unused spell and trap card zones, or from your spell and trap card zones to your unused original main monster zones, and vice versa. Basically, what that all means, folks, and I'll demonstrate this now. So, say I have the Seal of Orichalcos on my field. We'll just say that this is the field spell zone. And I have a Air Knight Parshaft in my main monster zone. Basically, during my turn, I can move it back to one of my spell and trap card zones that are being treated as a main monster zone by the Seal of Orichalcos effect. And say it goes to another turn later on, if I want to move it back to my main monster zone, I can do that. So essentially, I can move my monsters back and forth over time as long as I have the Seal of Orichalcos in play. So that's basically how that works, but there's more to this card than that. So the final effects of this card is, if a card or effect is activated, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard and negate the activation. If you do, destroy it. This effect, folks, is a spell speed 4 negation effect, meaning this can negate counter traps. I'll repeat the effect again. If a card or effect is activated, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation. If you do, destroy it. So, yeah, like I just said, it's a spell speed 4 negation, and even though this is a modified version of the original Upper Deck Entertainment seal that Upper Deck Entertainment used, even though I rewarded it, it is still a spell speed 4 negation through and through. So this can negate anything, including counter traps. The only thing that can withstand this negation effect is if you were to use a copy of the Seal of Orichalcos that has this modified effect on it that you have, and say I pitch this from my hand to negate a card effect. You pitch your seal from your hand to negate a card effect, and both of the seals will cancel each other out. That's pretty much a ruling. Anyway, and also the soul of whichever duelist loses the duelist forward winner. So this thing can claim souls. So next up, we got Orichalcos Dartz. Good old Dartz. And what Dartz does mainly is, essentially, I can activate it by sending one face-up Seal of Orichalcos I control to the graveyard, and it cannot be activated on the same turn that I've activated the Seal of Orichalcos. And also, while this card is face up on the field, its name becomes the Seal of Orichalcos, and it gains the effects of the Seal of Orichalcos during my main phase 1. I can gain 500 life points for each monster I control. And if an opponent's monster declares an attack, I contribute a monster to redirect the attack to the attacking monster. So basically, I got attack redirection and life point gaining. Next up, one copy of Orichalcos Tritos. I don't need to really explain this. What this mainly does is while Tritos is on board, it gains the effects of Dutros and the Seal of Orichalcos, and while Tritos is in play, all monsters I control cannot be harmed by your spell and trap cards. They're pretty much immune. Next up, I have one copy of Orichalcos Chimidare. Now, Chimidare is basically this engine's 4th layer. Now, here is what. Excuse me 1 minute, folks. I gotta get a drink of water. Hold on. Okay, people, I'm back. Sorry about that. Had to get a drink of water because my throat was a little dry. Anyway, back to Orichalcos Chimidare. Basically, I can only activate this by sending one face-up Orichalcos Tritos I control to the grave. Cannot be activated on the same turn that you've activated Orichalcos Tritos, which every Orichalcos Seal of Orichalcos layer does that, by the way. While this card is face up on the field, its name becomes the Seal of Orichalcos, and it gains the effects of the Seal of Orichalcos, Orichalcos Dutros, and Orichalcos Tritos. All monsters I control gain an additional 500 attack and are treated as Inferno monsters in addition to their normal attribute. So they gain what's called the Inferno attribute, which at some point I will be making most likely another like a sub archetype, or basically a sub series of cards that basically is meant to go with Chimidare. This way, the Inferno attribute can be basically utilized in its own deck. So keep a lookout for that in the future. It might be like it won't be a full deck, it might be just a series of cards, most likely. Next up, we got one copy of Orichalcos Galaxy. Now, what Orichalcos Galaxy does is similar to all the previous layers. I can only activate this by sending Orichalcos Chimidare that I control to the grave. Cannot be activated on the same turn that I activated Orichalcos Chimidare, yada yada yada. And while this card is face up on the field, its name becomes the Seal of Orichalcos, and it gains the effects of the Seal of Orichalcos, Orichalcos Dutros, Orichalcos Tritos, and Orichalcos Chimidare. All monsters I control gain an additional 1,000 attack points and are treated as evil monsters in addition to their normal attribute. So essentially, there's an evil attribute and an inferno attribute. So basically, like I said previously, just a few seconds ago, I will be introducing at some point in time, I don't know when, I will be introducing a sub-series of cards that basically go with Orichalcos, Chimidare, and Galaxy. This way I can take advantage of the Inferno attribute and the Evil attribute. So keep a lookout for that, because that may be a future project down the road. Next up, 2 copies of Chosen Destiny. It's very simple. I pay 1,000 life points to activate one of these effects. I can either add an Orichalcos card from my deck to my hand, or I can destroy one, ignoring its effects. So say for example, I'm about to lose the Orichalcos challenge, have my soul taken to the Great Leviathan, yada yada yada. On my turn, I'll play Chosen Destiny, blowing up my own seal, nobody's souls are taken. So that's pretty much how Chosen Destiny works. Next up, we have Orichalcos Eye. Now, what Orichalcos Eye does is, once per turn, I can pay 1,000 life points to add an Orichalcos card from my deck to my hand. So basically, this just allows you to fill up your hands over time with various Orichalcos cards. Next up, the legendary city of Atlantis. So this is basically a little addition to the deck I made many years ago, but it's had an errata previously. So what this does is, this card is also always treated as an Orichalcos card. It can only be activated while you control a face-up Orichalcos field spell. Once per turn only, if you control 4 or more Orichalcos cards on the field with different names, except an Orichalcos field spell, you can draw 2 cards. You can only control 1, the legendary city of Atlantis, on the field. So essentially, while you meet the requirements for this card's effect, it's essentially a pot of greed, essentially. You just draw 2 cards. And it's a continuous spell card, too. Next up, 1 copy of Impure Orichalcos. So what this does is, I can only activate this while I control an Orichalcos field spell, and all monsters I control gain 300 attack points. So on top of the 500 I get from the original Seal of Orichalcos, the 500 I get from Orichalcos Chima there, the 1,000 I get from Orichalcos Galaxy, and the 300 from this. All my monsters get a 2,300 attack point boost. That is a lot, and that pretty much sets up for OTKs. It's basically like I said in my very first Orichalcos video well over a decade ago. If I pretty much have all the requirements, if I basically have normal seal, Chimerair, Galaxy, and Impure all in their places, I can basically have a whole bunch of monsters on my field that will get a 2,300 attack point boost, and I can just literally OTK you immediately, like boom, 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 over. Just over. Next up, Orichalcos Forcum. So, what this card does is it cannot be activated unless I control an Orichalcos field spell. And if my opponent summons a monster, they take damage equal to half of that monster's original attack points. And this is not a hard once per turn, by the way. So, whatever monsters my opponent summons, they're going to be taking a bit of burn damage over time. Next up is Orichalcos Soul Deception. Now, what Soul Deception does this is another continuous spell card, by the way, can only be activated while you control an Orichalcos field spell, and control 3 Orichalcos monsters with different names. Once per turn only, you contribute 1 Orichalcos monster you control, take control of 1 monster your opponent controls with an attack less than or equal to the attributed monster's attack. So, say for example, I were to tribute, say, Orichalcos Shunoros, and Shunoros has absorbed like 3,000, 4,000 attack, 3,000, 4,000 damage from Kutora. So, say Kutora has absorbed 4K battle damage over time, and that damage was transferred to Shunoros when Kutora got blown up. I tribute Shunoros, since he's 4K, that means I can take control of any monster on your field that has less than 4,000 attack points. So that can mean I can take control of a lot of monsters. Next up, we got 1 Allure of Darkness, because, you know, a lot of my monsters in here are dark, so it makes sense. Then we got 2 Mystical Space Typhoons, standard back row removal, 1 one Dark Hole, 1 Lightning Vortex, and 1 Call the Haunted. And that right there, folks, is the main deck. Now I'm going to show you the extra deck. So first up, I am running 2 copies of Orichalcos Gem Dragon. Now what Gem Dragon does is this. It's an Xyz monster, and it requires 2 level 4 Orichalcos monsters. And this card's name is also always treated as Orichalcos Dragon. You can detach a material to add 1 Orichalcos card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. You can detach a material to banish 1 card on the field. You can only use each effect of Orichalcos Gem Dragon once per turn only. You can only control 1 Orichalcos Gem Dragon. So basically, it's a modification of the original pre-errata Orichalcos Dragon that Orichalcos players used well over a decade ago. It's just I made that version more modern, gave it a very cool name, and gave it an additional effect. So that's pretty much that in a nutshell. Next up comes a whole bunch of stuff that you guys should know very well. Number 66, Master Key Beetle. Number 17, Leviathan Dragon. Wind Up Zen Mains. Tim Tempo, the Percussion Djinn. 1 copy of Leviar the Sea Dragon. 1 Ghost Trick Alucard. 1 number 34 Terabyte. 1 Grinosaurus. 1 Tornado Dragon. 1 Steel Storm Roach. 1 number 39 Utopia. 1 Diamond Direwolf, and 1 Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. So that's pretty much it for the easy mode Orichalcos Challenge deck profile. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and as usual, I will link in the description the Orichalcos Challenge rules. The rules for the Orichalcos Challenge will be in the description below, so you can read them over, get acquainted with them, learn about them. And if you want to challenge the Orichalcos in free one of the souls that I've captured, you can basically find me on Discord. I am Yugioh Master 88. I'm not that hard to find. So once again, I'll repeat this again, just in case anybody misses this. If you want to challenge the Orichalcos Challenge, or basically any one of my other custom card decks, because I have like maybe 1 or 2 other custom card decks, besides the Orichalcos Challenge that you can go up against. But mainly it's Orichalcos Challenge, though. Anyway, if you want to challenge the Orichalcos Challenge, you can find me on Discord. Look for Yugioh Master 88. Get a hold of me, and we'll set up an Orichalcos Challenge and see how you fare against it. But anyway, that is pretty much it for the easy mode Orichalcos Challenge deck profile. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and until next time, this is Yugioh Master 88 saying see you later.